last night. It's just the more you dive into this game, the more you realize, like, yes, they are going to make the playoffs if they win. And if they lose, it's going to start feeling very dicey very quickly. It's essentially a playoff game on Sunday at Empower Field at Mile High.
Yeah, I mean, it's the equivalent in terms of a big game of what they had last year on Christmas Eve, right? Like, they were in a position last year on Christmas Eve, if they beat the Patriots, they're controlling their own destiny for making the postseason. And they laid an egg. That's my one, like, because I'm feeling good about where this team is. I'm looking at it saying, all right, they got a Colts team coming in here that I don't think is particularly good. They got to go to the Bengals, who, we'll see if they're playing for anything. The Chiefs come in here. We'll see if they play anything. We'll get to the Charger game because I have an issue with what they've done on that front. But you feel good about it until you look back and say, all they had to do was beat the Patriots and Bailey Zappi last year.
Zappy holidays.
And they couldn't get it done. But, yeah, man, they're in a good spot. And everybody wants to keep looking at the Colts and the Bengals and the Dolphins in the rearview mirror. I'm not. I'm looking out the front window. It's all about how do you get to the 5 seed. And I told you this yesterday, off air of my look, I don't know that this team's any good because they haven't beaten anybody. They haven't. That's not me being negative, but that's just a reality. But you can also sit here and I can come up with it of like, there's a legitimate Super Bowl path for this team if they can get to the 5 seed. Well, you ain't getting there if you don't win on Sunday.
Right.
It's a monster game. And then we'll be talking about the biggest game they've played probably in 8 years when they go next Thursday, a week from tomorrow, to L.A. to play the Chargers if they win on Sunday.
Yeah, definitely. And I love that you're bringing up the Super Bowl 2 minutes into the show. Leave it to
go.
you. All positivity. It's funny you do bring up the 5 seed, though, because last night about 6:30, Cello and I went round and round about that. We were talking about how when the Chiefs doinked in the kick on Sunday Night Football, for about 2 seconds, you're like, oh, really? And then it's like, no, take a step back. That was huge for the Broncos.
Huge.
You needed the Chargers to lose. And I spent 10 minutes trying to convince Cello why it was a good thing. And he goes, no, I hate the Chiefs. I wish the kick hadn't gone in. And I'm like, what are we talking about? They're tied at 8-5 with the Ravens and the Chargers. Yes, they're the 7 seed because of the tiebreakers, but the Ravens still have the Steelers on the schedule. They still have the Texans on the schedule, and you play the Chargers. That kick being doinked in by the Chiefs, not doinked out, means Denver can get the 5 seed. So I do like, in all seriousness, the fact that you're looking ahead in the standings and not behind. The problem is if you lose to the Colts on Sunday, then we all of a sudden are looking back behind again. What did the Dolphins do down in Houston? Is Cincy going to get hot and go 9-8? Like, if you win Sunday, then all we're doing is looking ahead the rest of the way.
Yeah, no doubt. Your scoreboard watching either way, but it's a matter of, are you looking at the teams ahead of you or the teams behind you? And Sunday is the one that's the game that's going to determine that. But look, the Chiefs were winning the division no matter what.
Exactly.
If they miss that kick, they're winning the division. They're not going to just totally fall apart. Now, look, do I think they're a bit of a fraud, quote unquote, which is a weird term to throw around at the 1 seed and a team that's lost 1 game? But yeah, they've had so many games that could have been losses that wound up being wins. Like, it won't shock me a bit when they lose in the playoffs at all.
Yeah, but a fraud with dark magic is still a scary fraud.
No doubt.
And that's what it feels like the Chiefs have.
But they're winning the division either way.
Yes.
So you're trying to catch the Chargers. You weren't catching the Chiefs, right? Like, you can catch L.A. You can't catch KC. So you want the team you can catch to lose, even though that's a weird thing to be rooting for.
Right.
I get it. But yes, I think that if you get the 5 seed, you go down to Houston, and no game in the NFL is easy, right? Including this week. Last year's Christmas Eve game tells you all you need to know. But I defy anybody to give me an explanation as to why going to Houston is not an easier wildcard weekend trip for the Broncos than going to Buffalo or going to Pittsburgh. Both of those will be buzzsaws waiting to happen. Doesn't mean you can't win those games, but the atmosphere and the teams and just the momentum those two teams have going, right? Like, I know the Bills lost in a shootout to the Rams, but that feels like a team that's Super Bowl or bust. The way the Steelers, they're 6-1 with Russ. The only loss came in a blizzard. They're literally inches away from being 7-0 since they made that switch. That's a team that's going in the right direction. The Texans are just going to win their division by default. It's a bad division. It's the AFC South and the NFC South. Somebody's got to win it.
Yeah, they're really good at college football. They're not so good at pro football.
Right. That's a very winnable game. But it's not just that. It's that the 6 and the 7 at that point, it's not going to be the Colts or the Dolphins. It's going to be the Chargers and the Ravens.
All right, so lay this out for me then. This is
Okay.
what you laid out for me yesterday or I guess Monday when you and I were here for a meeting. But tell the listeners this dream scenario you have.
All right, so first is you're the 5 seed. You're going to Houston in the first round. That's a winnable game.
Check the box.
But the 6 and the 7 are 2 good teams. They're 2 teams who can go on the road and win. The Chargers, the way they play defense, they could go to Pittsburgh and win. They could go to Buffalo and win. In round 2, they could go to Kansas City and win. Same with Baltimore. The way they run the football, they can go into any of those places and win. So if you're the 5 seed, they're the 6 and the 7. It's not outside the realm of possibility that the 7 wins in round 1, they're going to Kansas City. The 6 wins in round 1, they're coming to Denver.
You would host a divisional game all of a
In the
sudden.
divisional game.
Yep.
And then if the 7 wins at Kansas City, you're hosting the AFC title game. It's not that crazy. I know it sounds
I
crazy.
know. I have to smile, though, that you have come up with a scenario where the Broncos can host 2 playoff games on their way to the Super Bowl.
Okay, do you not think
I'm not
Baltimore
saying
could
anything
win?
you're saying is crazy. I'm just saying that's so wild when you just take it on the surface level. That's why I like that
Can
you
Lamar
break it down.
Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens go win in Buffalo?
With Derrick Henry, yeah,
All right, can the Chargers go win in Pittsburgh?
definitely.
Okay, that's all I'm saying. And the Broncos can go win in Houston.
All of a sudden, the bracket breaks in your favor in a pretty insane way.
And even if it doesn't continue to break that way, but it goes that way on Wild Card Weekend, and whichever the 2 is the 7, let's say it's the Chargers, they go to Kansas City and lose. All right, you got to go to Kansas City for the AFC title game. Broncos just showed they can hang with the Chiefs in Arrowhead. Like it's not that crazy. And this is for a team that I still don't know if they're any good. Will I don't? They haven't they beat the NFC South, the Raiders twice, the Jets, and the Browns. That's an ugly resume. It is.
Well, good thing resumes don't matter. This isn't college football. There's no committee.
Right. Exactly. If we were a committee and we were debating it, that would be a very viable argument against the Broncos. But man, if they can get the 5 seed, it's not outside the realm of possibility that they make some noise in the playoffs. I get it. I'm being crazy with the Super Bowl talk, but I'm just trying to explain how making some noise is possible. That's why look through the front window. Don't look in the rearview mirror. That's why allowing the flex of the Chargers game, you're trying to catch the Chargers. You're not worried about the Bengals. And that's why I think that's going to ultimately turn out to be a big mistake.
Yeah, well, it was a big decision at the time. You and I were doing Denver Sports Tonight the day that came down. We went round and round about it, and we both ultimately agreed that it's going to be a massive story, right? It already was a big story, but come Friday morning, it's either going to be, wow, great call by Sean Payton. Now they get an extra 9 days until their next game. They beat LA. Or it's going to be, man, they look sloppy. They look slow. They look tired. Was it really the best idea to get on a bird on a short week and play your second Thursday night road game of the year? Man, we all wish that game was Sunday. Because remember, the Broncos accepted the flex from the NFL.
Correct.
It's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. I can't wait for that Friday. Because you see what I'm saying? Like right now, it's a big story. But Friday morning, it's going to be a major story.
Well,
either way, because if you win, it's what a smart decision. If you lose, it's what the heck were you thinking?
Yeah, no doubt. And it'll start to be a big story. I mean, Monday we're going to be talking about the Colts game. So let's just, you got to take care of business first, but assuming you win. Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, game day, all we're talking about is, was this a good decision? We get the answer next Thursday night. And Friday, that is the topic of conversation. Now, I do think there was a strategic part to it when it came to the Bengals, because you got the Bengals out of a Thursday night, so they didn't have extra time to prepare for you. And
you
now,
flip 6 days of rest, 3
Right.
for you, 3 taken away from them.
So that's if the Bengals weren't the team getting flexed out of Thursday, I'm not sure they would have done it. But there's another thing that I think does play into it. And you and I talked about it at the time. When the Broncos play the Chargers in LA, it's basically the same Chargers team they played in here. It is. Like, you're going to be preparing for Justin Herbert and that defense, and it's the same team. The Broncos are not the same team they were in that game. They're not. They've changed a ton, and mainly their quarterback has developed and changed a ton. So there is more work to do in a short week from a preparation standpoint for the Chargers getting ready for the Broncos than the Broncos getting ready for the Chargers. I would 100% buy into that if the game was in Denver. The fact that you have to travel and you got to get on a bird on Wednesday makes it to where it's like, gosh, that's a big gamble. Such a big gamble, because that is a more important game than the Bengals game. The Broncos were trying to look ahead, and they thought the Bengals game would be more important, which was looking at it from a negative versus a positive. If you were thinking positive and you were thinking we're going to take care of business and we're going to win, You would have been looking out the front window saying, how do we make sure we win that Chargers game? You're not worried about the Bengals who are behind you and the objects in the rearview mirror aren't as close as they appear.
Yeah, but for a franchise that hasn't made the playoffs in nearly a decade, I do get the line of thinking there of at that time, James, they made this decision like what, a month ago now? 3 weeks ago now? At that time, it was still more about getting in. Now that you've kept winning and the schedule has broken your way in terms of the Ravens have all of a sudden lost 5 games, the Chargers have now lost 5 games. Now, I think with different information, if you had a latte with Sean Payton, he probably says no to that flex. Probably says no today, but he had to make the decision 3 weeks ago. Okay. There was a deadline.
Okay, so you're probably right. He probably would say he wouldn't do it. Well, then he made a mistake. Like if there was
I don't think there's a mistake in being humble about your team and then being overly surprised that you're overachieving and Baltimore and LA both stumbled a couple times.
Okay, but at the time they had to make the decision, right? There was the possibility it played out the way it's played out, and you're going to regret the fact that now you have to go play a huge game against the Chargers on a short week. Was there a lot of possibility that they were going to really regret that they didn't get a couple extra days to prepare for the Bengals?
If that game in Cincy was for the 7 seed, then yeah, definitely. Definitely. If you thought that was going to be a win and you're in week 17 type game, then you wanted to get in.
Okay, maybe. But let me, I guess I look at it this way. If you're struggling in week 17 to get the 7 seed, you ain't doing anything in the playoffs.
Oh, no, but remember, this whole year was about symbolic and getting the winning record for the first time and developing Bo Nix. 98% of the hosts on this station have said that for 6 months. Now they're changing their minds because they realize this team can be a little dangerous, and I was one of them. I'm not throwing anyone under the bus. It was all about getting to 9 wins, maybe making the playoffs, and developing Bo Nix. Guess what? All those boxes have been checked, so now we all have bigger aspirations.
Okay, but I make decisions based on, all right, I had option A and option B. If it goes badly in option A, could I live with that? Or if it goes badly in option B, could I live with that? Which one could I live with more? I could live with making the bad decision and costing myself the 7 seed versus making a bad decision and costing myself the 5 seed.
No, because you owed it to this.
That's a mistake.
You owed it to this fan base to make the playoffs for the first time since 2015.
It's not like they would have been playing on a normal week. It's not like they would have been at a huge disadvantage having to go to Cincinnati on a normal week.
Right, but they
really overthought it. They overthought it.
No, you really messed up a Cincy team that, let's be honest, is extremely underachieved. Like, if they even had a middle-of-the-road defense, we're talking about Cincy with 8, 9, 10 wins, okay? So you really were thinking, man, that Bengals team is bound to get hot at any minute. Joe Burrow looks like an MVP. Jamar Chase looks like the best wide receiver in the league. Let's mess them up when they keep shooting themselves in the foot. Let's fire one more time.
Well, look, Sean Payton just needs to be consistent. And you can call him arrogant. You can call him full of himself. You can say whatever you want about him. But he's the guy who gets up there and goes, the next time I only win 6 games will be a first.
Well, he wasn't wrong. He won 8.
He wasn't. So then be arrogant about the fact of like, no, we're chasing the Chargers. We ain't worried about the Bengals. Like, pick a lane. It was my issue with John Fox of like, are you a riverboat gambler or are you conservative? I would rather you're a riverboat gambler than conservative, but if you're going to be conservative, always be conservative.
He was like 99% of the time. He drove me nuts. His favorite play was a punt. Why are you going to bring up John Fox? What are you doing, man? What are you doing? Here's a quote today from Sean that I want to read to you, okay? Because he started getting hit. I wrote about this at denversports.com. He started getting hit with the, are you hearing the outside noise about the playoffs? Are you talking to the guys about the playoffs? Like, those were the tones of the questions today down there at Broncos Park, powered by Common Spirit. And his quote today was, quote, 6 weeks ago, I kind of rolled my eyes. But now you get into 4 weeks left for all these teams. Shoot, each team knows exactly where they are and what they need to do, ourselves included. So I think Sean's kind of telling you in that answer, and it sort of puts a bow on our conversation here. Like, yeah, we were talking about the playoffs in October because we're on Sports Talk Radio. We're fans. That's what we do. But even the head coach admitted today, I'm not rolling my eyes anymore. I am thinking about the playoffs. I am talking to my team about the playoffs, and we know what we need to do to make the postseason. I thought that was a notable change down there in his tone at the podium.
Yeah, and 6 weeks ago, they were 5-3, getting ready to go to Baltimore and to Kansas City. I think we were all sitting there saying, like, we'll see. And then they lose both those games. One, they got boat raced, 41-10 to Baltimore, but then, should have probably won the Chiefs game. But you're 5-5 at that point. Like, we have a playoff team. Yeah, you're in the thick of it at this point. But at 5-3, he's saying he didn't believe in his team?
He said 6 weeks ago, I kind of rolled my eyes. But now You get into 4 weeks left for all these teams. Shoot, each team knows exactly where they are and what they need to do, ourselves included.
And here's the other thing about once you get into the playoffs. And again, I don't know if the Broncos are any good or not. I don't, because they haven't beaten anybody that's any good. They have not. That's just a fact. But the way they play, they're a good defensive team. They got a quarterback that can run around and make some plays. Like, they can win playoff games. They can. And so that's what makes them a dangerous team if they get in.
Especially in an AFC that really only has one super scary team.
And that's Buffalo?
Yes.
Which is funny because they're not the 1 seed, but you're right. That's the only game I would look at it and say they don't have a shot is if they had to go to Buffalo. Number 2 would be if they have to go to Baltimore, and Baltimore's not going to win their division.
Right. So, I mean, the only way you'd have to go to Baltimore is your crazy scenario with Baltimore being the 5 and you being the 7. But, yeah, they're not winning in Buffalo, but other than that, like, and you and I have had this conversation, there's just not that many good teams in the NFL this year. There's Detroit, there's Buffalo, there's maybe Philly, there's KC and their weirdo magic. That's kind of it.
No, exactly. It's a little bit like the Buffs in the Big 12. Like, are the Buffs a great team? No, but nobody else in that conference was.
No, did they blow a golden opportunity? Yeah.
And that's a little bit what, like, had CU gone to the Big 12 title game, I could have seen them beat Arizona State. I could have seen them lose to Arizona State. Had they won and got into the playoff, I could have seen them beat pretty much anybody, maybe other than the top 2 or 3 teams. And I could have seen them lose in the first round at SMU. That wouldn't have shocked me either. Broncos are a little bit that same way.
Yeah. Feels wide open.
So you got, that's what makes Sunday so big.
Yeah.
Like, we saw what the Buffs did when they had to go to Arrowhead and play KU. And they laid an egg and it cost them. That's what the Colts are coming in here, right? So has this team changed? A year ago, they had an opportunity. They weren't quite ready for prime time on Christmas Eve, and they blew it. This isn't as big a stage because it's not like the country's going to be watching, but in terms of what's at stake, it's pretty much as big because if you lose, Will, and then you got a short week at the Chargers, then you go to the Bengals.
Oh, you may miss the postseason altogether.
It's the tipping point. This is the tipping point of the season. We may look down the road and go like, that was when Bo Nix came of age. That's when Sean Payton established himself as like, yep, I'm going to do in Denver what I did in New Orleans. If you lose it, it has the chance to be the tipping point the other way. That's when the bubble burst on Bo Nix. That's when we all realized Sean Payton just doesn't have it anymore. Like, all those storylines could come out of this game depending on how it goes.
Yeah, but the bubble also burst on your boy Russ last year when he couldn't beat the Patriots. Like, that was...
He put up 16 points in the fourth quarter to get him back in it.
James, he got benched for a spark. Like, come on. That was the ultimate...
Wait a minute. Will, don't read the bullet points out of...
But I'm telling you,
Broncos
that was...
Park, powered by Common Spirit. He didn't get benched for a spark. He got benched so he wouldn't get hurt.
I get it. But I'm telling you, that was the end of Russell Wilson in Denver.
It was.
Like, you're talking about bubbles being burst. He couldn't beat the Patriots at home on Christmas Eve, and he never got to play here again.
I know. And honestly, what's funny about that game is that game might be the biggest reason why I was so upset that they decided to move on from him, because what he did in the fourth quarter, scoring 16 unanswered to tie it from, it was 23-7. He scores 16 unanswered, 23-23. They get the ball back, and Sean decides to go back to calling his bubble screens, and it's 2nd and 13 all of a sudden. Like, that was magical. It's why I was so excited about what I saw out of Bo Nix against the Browns. I don't care if you can go out there and manage the game and throw wide open passes to Nate Atkins on a well-designed play. Like, there's 60 quarterbacks in the league that could have made the throws Bo Nix made against Atlanta. There aren't very many quarterbacks in the league who can make the throw he made to Marvin Mims. There just aren't. There aren't a lot of quarterbacks in the league who can make the throws he made to Cortland Sutton, where instead of taking the check down like Troy Aikman wanted him to do, he's throwing the ball downfield and making a play. That excites me. The Christmas Eve game was tough because, man, that was the magic. It was right there.
I know. But even just hearing you talk in the last 60 seconds, I do have to say we've made progress, okay? We've made progress. I feel like we're in a therapy session. You had 2 guys, and you felt like you could only love one of them as your franchise QB, either Russ or Bo.
Yeah.
And I think you're realizing now you can love both of them. You, admittedly, you have a Russell Wilson Steelers jersey. You can root for Russ in Pittsburgh, but I know deep down you're a Broncos fan, and you really like Bo Nix now, too. You're really starting to come around on Bo Nix now, too. And I think that's the breakthrough, is that maybe for the longest time over the summer in your head, you're like, well, it's one or the other. It's Russ or Bo. It's Russ or Bo. The good news is it's both. They're both playoff quarterbacks this year.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and two things can be true at the same time, right? That's a Zach Bye-ism,
Mm-hmm.
and I think both of them can be the right option. Now, do I think this team would be better off, even all that I've seen from Bo Nix, and as excited as I am about him, and all he's got to do is beat a good team, and then I'm on board. That's it. He's got one more hoop to jump through.
So he wins Sunday. You're bowed out.
That's not a good team. You got to beat the Chargers in LA.
Okay.
That's the only good team left on the schedule.
Okay.
Unless Kansas City's playing for something.
Okay.
Or go win a playoff game. That would get me on board.
What if Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase score 45 and he wins 48-45?
He beat a terrible defense. But that's all anybody told me when Russ threw for 400 yards against that team. Oh, it's a terrible defense. So we got to grade it the same way.
Okay.
My point all along has been I do think this team would be better this year, next year, and probably the year after with Russell Wilson, Brock Bowers, and extra cap space. I do. Do I think down the road after that they're going to be better off with Bo Nix? I wasn't sure of that at the beginning of the year. Because, Will, I was scared to death when I hear stuff like supercomputer. Our guy Cecil telling the supercomputer. And I hear he's a processor. And I hear about, everything in his backpack was all football related. And, we faxed him the plays at 10 o'clock at night and he knew them the next day. You know what? That reeked of Wednesday whiteboard wizard to me. And it scared me. And then all he does is throw the ball behind the line of scrimmage at Oregon. And the Broncos come up with a stat of like, well, if you take those out, he's still. It's like, you're trying too hard, fellas.
What'd you want him to find in his backpack?
I don't know.
Like going full Carmelo Anthony at TSA 20 years ago? Is that what you were hoping for?
No, but I don't know. Something else.
I'm cool with all football stuff in the backpack.
Those stories, but my point is, none of it was about his physical abilities as a quarterback. We didn't hear about his ability to make all the throws. We certainly didn't hear about his ability to make plays with his feet.
Well, then the talking points that coming out of Oregon were crap.
They were terrible.
It's the fault of the PR people in Eugene then.
But I was afraid that's what he was going to be. And then so when everybody's excited when they go win in Tampa, right? And he makes a bunch of throws, and I said it at the time, and everybody got mad, and I didn't mean it as a knock. I'm just being a realist, that he didn't make a single throw in that game that Jarrett Stidham couldn't make. You think Jarrett Stidham could throw the ball to Jaleel McLaughlin on a swing pass on 4th and goal and watch Jaleel make a great move to score? Of course he could. So could Zach Wilson. But he finally, against the Browns, did something that neither of those quarterbacks could do.
Well, he also blew the brakes off Atlanta. He had a game-winning drive in Kansas City. Like his last month, 6 weeks, 2 months has been really good.
Mom and giving him the game-winning drive.
Yes, he had a game-winning drive
after
in Kansas City.
After he put up 10 yards of total offense in the second half prior to that.
Again, James, he was the rookie of the month in October. Like this dude has turned a page from September to October to November, and it's going to cherry on top is going to be him winning Offensive Rookie of the Year.
I think he is going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think if you want to go get a good Christmas present and buy a Broncos jersey, I don't think a Bo Nix jersey is a bad investment at this point.
No, he's going to be here the next decade.
It's better than the Locke, Wilson, Lutz jerseys I've got running around my house.
Right. One more quote from Sean today when he was asked about if he brings up all these playoff scenarios to his team, the stuff that you and I have been breaking down. He said, at the right time, I might just say, guys, hey, this is where we're at. This is what we're looking at. Look, it's a group that I think understands that. So he says at the right time he's going to do it. Well, then there's open locker room this afternoon. And you got guys like Quinn Minor saying, oh, yeah, Sean talked about all that in the meeting this morning. Sean laid those out to us in the meeting this morning. So Sean tells the folks, I'll do it at the right time. The players spill the bean. Well, the right time was this morning. I'm curious your thoughts on, do you like the Wednesday before the biggest game of the year that he is officially putting the word playoffs into his players' heads?
Yes.
I do too.
Yes. They're also grown-ups. They're sports fans.
They can check ESPN.com and look at the standings.
They know the standings. They know what's at stake. Just lay it out for them. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, fellas, where we want to get to, it's a 4-game gauntlet to get to it, and it starts on Sunday. And if we beat this team, we basically eliminate them, and we're in great shape. People that are afraid of pressure?
I know.
What are we doing here?
And I guarantee there's people like, kids' gloves. Just tell them, just worry about the Colts. Everything else will take care of itself. No. They're adults. They have working brains.
If he wants me to come down and lay out the Super Bowl scenario for him, I will.
Yeah, lay out the pressure that you're on. And really, again, the fork in the road that Sunday afternoon will be. All right, don't forget Denver Sports is on YouTube. Would love for you to find us there. Subscribe, like, comment. Check out Cecil Lammy, Andrew Mason, James Marilat, myself, Jake Shapiro. The whole crew is on YouTube. Richie Carney as well, Joey Freeberg. We got a good crew. Subscribe, please. Denver Sports on YouTube. There was a thing that came out of left field today. Absolute left field. Involved Hall of Famer Steve